Welcome back.
Hi everyone. Hi Angel.
Hi, Marita. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. So, what
Hmm.
are we going to discuss this week?
Today we're going to talk about this myth of scarcity. And what prompted it was a conversation that I was having with an elder from Michoacan, one of my teachers, one of my many teachers. And they were saying that when in the time that we're living with, it's important to be able to remember what the grandmothers and the grandfathers taught us. And remember those times of not from nostalgia, but remembering again the roots of who we are. We come from great people, great civilizations where the rules were very different. And more importantly, value was different. And so when he was speaking about scarcity, he was talking about how when the conquistadores came and wanted all their gold, and they asked them, "Is your God is so hungry for gold? We don't understand why you want all of this. It's just a metal." And he said, "We understood it was a metal. We have value for it as a rock, as that, but our value, we were rich, and we continue to be rich in relationship." And wanting clean air, clean water, growing our food, having a family value system. And that is really where he was kind of moving this idea of look around what you have, right? And what are you building? And don't let the outside world tell you whether it's good, bad, or enough. So that's kind of what prompted this. But let's dive a little bit deeper in, Angel. What do you have to say?
Well, I think, like you, or when we grow up in the Western world, we are told about scarcity. We're not living in an abundant universe. We're living in a universe that's very limited, and that's based on fear. And scarcity and fear, comes hand in hand, right? When we talk about scarcity, it brings fear. When we have fear, we live in scarcity, I think back and forth. And the things that we learned of value, things that are expensive to buy, are the cars and the big houses and a certain lifestyle, maybe certain brands, right? But the things that are really abundant and necessary for our lives to be blissful are not valued. There is no price on it, really. And you mentioned clean water, clean air, community, relationship. I would also add connection to the ancestors, connection to the land, connection to our roots. We can't really put a price tag on it. And I think that's why in many ways also we have a hard time to see that through that lens, that Western lens, as something that has a lot of value until we realize that when we don't have that, we don't have much. I was reading an article a few weeks ago about there is this research has been done on what is the medium income of families or people and in relation to happiness. And it was done on the US. And obviously, if you live in New York City or if you live, in the middle of nowhere, obviously there are variations. But in fact, the level to which happiness starts to decrease comes very quickly. Meaning that obviously there is, basic needs to shelter, to have food, to have education, to have, all the things you need to survive. But very quickly, I think it was around 80 or 90K. When it goes above that, the happiness of people start to decrease slowly. And I was like really interested. I really read the details of the study. I was like, this is not possible. This is not, there must be something wrong. And, it was a very extended research done on a lot of people. And I think, my first reactions no, oh no, if you have, $300,000 a year instead of $80,000 a year, you definitely can have more abundance and more safety and all of that. But it shows the opposite. In fact, it shows people that have really expensive, like penthouse apartment and really big houses, in fact, have a higher risk of mental health crisis. And what they connected it to is that this lack of community, this lack of connection to nature, this lack of direct relationship, because maybe your relationship evolved based on material needs and ownership of things. And so when I think of scarcity, and we all, I guess, have tendency sometimes to go back to that mindset. Let's say we don't have a good month, or we don't make enough money, or we have a bill to pay, and we might go back in there. And I think the human beings, because the way it was raised and because it doesn't have that community constantly around it, quickly return to fear, quickly return to lack. And it's hard and it becomes blurry to see what's already there. Oh, yeah, I have a roof above me. And yes, I have clean air where I live. I'm really blessed. I have, 2 springs on my land. I can drink clean water, all the time. I have love. I have a partner, I have a child, I have a family. And those things somehow, they seems to not matter, but we all know, in fact, that's what matters the most. We get distracted by those notions of scarcity and empowered by greed, right? Empowered by the pricing of things. And it becomes difficult then to constantly return to the true value of life, the true value of health. And what does that mean? I remember, and I will just share that story. My grandfather and my grandmother were married in 1939 at the beginning of World War II. And my grandfather was turning 18 at the time when he went to war. They got married. Literally a week later, he left to fight Nazi Germany in Europe. And they didn't see each other. There was no cell phone. I mean, they were writing letters that sometimes get there or not. And when war ended, and they got back together in 1945, and my mother was just born. She was born a month after the end of the war. They had their first Christmas. And my grandfather told me this story that their first Christmas, they were so poor and the country was so devastated that their first Christmas basically was only able to buy 3 dates. They were living in Morocco, and he went to the market, bought 3 dates, and he said, I gave 2 dates to your grandmother and I ate one for myself. And he said, looking back, this was one of our most happy Christmas. They had nothing left. They survived. They could have died. They had each other. They had a newborn baby. And I think what he meant by that is that this love that we had, this connection, this relationship was everything. And that's all we ever need. And my grandfather, ended up making a good life for himself, but he always remembered this time as a time of deep happiness. And that's what I witnessed when I traveled to third world countries, where people have very little, very often, but are very giving and somehow are very relaxed, are very happy. They experience abundance through, like in Peru, people are like, look around. This is abundant. Look at the land. Look at the cornfield. Look at the waters coming down.
Mm.
And we have to really, really immerse ourselves in that constantly to keep reminding ourselves of this abundance and not live in scarcity.
Yeah, you said something I think really powerful there, that I just want to kind of say again, to repeat, and is, when it comes from scarcity, as you're talking about it, includes ownership.
Mm.
And ownership disconnects us sometimes, many times, because we don't know how to take care of things, because we don't understand the value of it, right? That relationship changes because then we think, oh, now I own it, now I have to take care of it, and it's more, and we get overwhelmed by it. But the thing with that need, right? That I don't have, I need, right? Versus um, I I am. And that allows you to have connection. And I think that's one of the, a powerful seed to plant at any time, but specifically now as people are sitting with what is next, what is possible, right? And going back to the stories of the grandmothers and the grandfathers, right, who lived in a very different world, right, that they found it was enough. Like you said, they didn't need the phones, they didn't need the cars, right? And this isn't about not, humans advancing, but again, what does advancing mean? In an indigenous way, we actually considered a society that we're living in as backwards.
Mm.
The societies before us were much more forward thinking because they were inclusive. They believed in biodiversity, not just one way. So if you sit with a lot of indigenous, grandmothers and grandfathers, and you really like, after they've told you the bedtime story, they will tell you that the time we're living in are the dark ages. They're darker, the golden age, and not because of, again, romance and everything's better in the past, it was about connection. Even the science was about connection because it was cosmology. And so I think, again, as we've been talking throughout this year about connection and disconnection, whether it's healing, community, and things like that, scarcity is part of that. The moment that you're in that scarcity, you feel disconnected from what you think you need versus what you want. And I think today it's a beautiful invitation from the grandmothers and the grandfathers, whether they're paternal, maternal, or the trees and the sky outside, to sit with how much we have and how much abundance is around us, and have that be what leads us forward, and not to manifest to control, but to just understand we are here and now, and it is enough.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marita.
Thank you, Angel.